Hello everyone. Today we are together with a very reputable Hungarian law firm, and we will talk about the FDI regime in the Hungary. LKT is an independent full-service commercial law firm, predominantly having a foreign client basis. And I would like to ask our distinguished guests to introduce themselves. Adam, Paul, and Georgi, would you please introduce yourself?
Good evening, good afternoon to all. It's good to see you and to have you here. My name is Pára Hóti. Together with my colleagues, we are representing Lakatos Kövesi and Partners. Thank you for the introduction, Szafak. We are an independent Hungarian law firm, full service. That means we cover all areas where businesses might need assistance, from corporate to banking and finance, from real estate to litigation, and all other areas. And we also have sector specialized teams focusing on the financial regulatory sector, energy, telecoms, and all the other regulated sectors. We are here because we believe that there are a number of opportunities for investors coming from Turkey and also from other countries in investing into Hungary. And we believe that for all those having a picture as to what the investment climate, the relevant regulation for foreign direct investments, and also state subsidies is something that they want to consider when making their business decisions, and also in mapping opportunities. I'm here together with my colleague Adam Mátyus, who's a partner in our corporate practice group with decades of experience in these subjects, and also my colleague György Tóth, who's also sitting in a corporate practice doing most M&A transactions, FDI clearances, and related areas. Szafak, how do you want to continue?
I would like to ask you some questions about the Hungarian market. Let's kick off with the priorities, the key priorities for the Hungarian government in attracting the foreign direct investment. What are those?
Yeah, I mean, that is a very fair and important question. I would start that the general aim of the Hungarian government is to attract foreign direct investment. And the specific policy that they have developed over the last couple of years is so-called the opening to the east or southeast, attracting investment from Asia. The key government policy is connectivity in this respect, that is to make Hungary a place where the Western and the Eastern investments can meet and strengthen each other. More specifically to Turkish investors, we see a number of sectors where the government has already encouraged investments, and investments are already there, starting initially from the real estate sector, then spilling over to the automotive sector, and also significant investments in the logistics area, and more recently, cooperation and investments in the energy sector, which cover not only natural gas, but also renewables. We see good examples in the defense sector, also in telecoms, and also purchase of a Hungarian bank by a Turkish investor. So from that, I think, in summary, the key government objectives are creating jobs, industrializing undeveloped areas, and developing peripheral areas, regions in the country.
Great. How does the Hungary's current economic landscape make it an attractive destination for foreign investors? Are there any specific incentives or programs in place to encourage and support the foreign investors?
Adam, could you elaborate on that, please?
Yes, so basically, as Hungary is a member of the European Union, we have some framework within which the government can subsidize foreign investors. Basically, we have a specific law on which areas foreign investors might get state subsidy on the one hand. On the other hand, we have also some caps which cannot be exceeded. So dependent on the countryside, on the specific area within Hungary, there is a kind of minimum investment beyond which subsidy can be achieved. This is from the more developed region, it is 10 million euro. From the mid-developed region, it is 5, but there is also regions when investments around about 3 million euro can get subsidies. And there are also some thresholds like from 3 to 55, from 55 to 110, and 110 beyond. And the law defines the maximum cap which can be provided by the state. This is, for instance, up to 55 million euro. 50% of the total investment, 50% of the total investment can be subsidized. But the subsidy is normally divided into 2 parts: the direct cash investments, which is actual payment by the government, non-refundable, and the other is the corporate income tax exemption. And these 2 elements add up the total investment, the total state subsidy. And the proportion depends on the government decisions. So it can be the entire subsidy can be granted in the form of cash subsidy, but it can also be granted in the form of corporate income tax exemption. Of course, investors prefer a direct cash subsidy. Corporate tax exemption can be used for a period of 12 years. And of course, this is regulated by the EU, and any investments exceeding 110 million euro is also subject to the clearance of the European Commission. There are some other government incentives, such as the development incentive and for instance, from the local government tax holiday, but in compared to the total amount of state subsidy, they are substantially lower. And maybe just some few words about the really huge investments. When there is a really huge investment, then there are some out-of-the-fence public-related support by the government, constructing a highway connection, railway connection, but this is really for the huge scale investments. And these support should also serve public purposes, otherwise it will be viewed as non-permitted state subsidy. So in a nutshell, this is the way how our government is supporting foreign investments, and this is used quite often. So almost every week there is a decision by the government on supporting to investors.
Thank you, Adam. Here, I want to ask a question. In terms of the regulatory considerations, what should the investors be aware of to ensure a smooth FDI process?
Yeah, so in terms of the FDI process, I think the first and the most important thing to be aware is that there is an FDI clearance system in Hungary, and such system is very strict. And most importantly, there is not just one, but 2 FDI clearance systems in Hungary, which work in parallel. What this means that in Hungary, transaction structuring is very important from the very beginning. So it is always advisable to involve Hungarian lawyers in transaction structuring from the very beginning. In relation to these FDI systems, what you should know that, as I said, there are 2 parallel systems. The first system, we call it general FDI system, and it was introduced in 2019 in line with the EU law and EU recommendation. This FDI system covers only the strategic sectors, which have importance from a national perspective. And interestingly, at that time, so in 2019, there were only a couple of member states, including Hungary, which had FDI system in place. Now it's completely different. There are only a couple of member states which do not have any FDI system in place. The second FDI regime in Hungary is the so-called special or the COVID FDI system, as we call it. It was introduced during the COVID pandemic, and it was intended to be a temporary system, but now it's still with us, and it's envisaged to be with us for a long time. In terms of FDI structuring, what you should be aware is that there are always three factors that every investor in Hungary should consider, whether it qualifies as a foreign investor or not, what are the activities of the target company, and what is the deal structure, whether it is a share deal, an asset deal, or it's implemented through capital increase or with a subscription. Just in short, I think the key takeaways in these FDI systems is that it always affects deal certainty, and let's say it creates deal uncertainty. The FDI decisions, the approvals are always discretionary. So of course, the law says the government agency needs to consider whether it affects national security or not, but you can guess it's a very vague rule, and it can be interpreted in many ways. And as I said, it's a discretionary decision, so this always creates some deal uncertainty, and how we usually treat it as a condition precedent in the transactional document. And the second important aspect is the timing. So these authorities always, at least from our experience, always decide on the very last time of the deadline. What you need to consider, and sometimes they are in delay, which means that and that there are no effective remedies against these delays. So you have to be careful when you are articulating these condition precedents in the transactional agreement, whether how these delays should be treated. So these are just in a nutshell the key considerations in terms of the Hungarian FDI process.
Okay, thank you very much. Well, can you provide insights into the key industries or sectors that are particularly promising for the investment in Hungary? For example, what are the specific challenges and opportunities for FDI in Hungary's key sectors, such as technology, energy, and manufacturing?
Mm-hmm. I think that the background I think I need to give at this point is that there are some recent further encouraging developments in relation to bilateral Turkish and Hungarian connections, which is that at the beginning of this year, the two countries had signed 5 trade cooperation protocols during the visit of your president in Hungary. And these agreements cover a number of areas, including the defense industry, natural gas, education, and technology. Among the signed agreements, a memorandum of understanding was signed in strengthening the cooperation in the defense industry. And then also another memorandum of understanding was signed in relation to the cooperation in the field of natural gas between Hungarian energy conglomerate NBM and Botas. And also there is a separate memorandum of understanding now covering the cooperation in the field of nuclear energy, basically to institutionalize and to increase the knowledge sharing and experience between the two countries. So these are recent developments which further strengthen the possibility that there are opportunities. And I would say that there are a number of sectors where we see a drive in the trends, emerging trends in Hungary. One most notable is the automotive industry, where I think the development of the automotive industry has been one of the successes in the last 30 years in Hungary. Most of the German car manufacturers and many others have plants in Hungary, and well, obviously the automotive sector is not currently challenged with major innovations, and also a restructuring of many extended supply chains. We see that new manufacturers, including Asian manufacturers, bring in and establish manufacturing into Europe, and many consider Hungary among the desirable locations. And many of the car plants are really the state of the art, and already involves Turkish investors like Şişecam in the glass manufacturing. Another sector which I think is particularly interesting for Turkish investors, and I think I've just seen in the Q&A someone raising the question about that.
Yeah, the real estate.
We see an intense activity in the real estate sphere, and this is driven by activity in various sectors. This starts from logistics sites, also offices, hotels, and most recently student accommodation, and we also see challenges in the retail sector, which was previously hit by the crisis. So the nature of the work is and the opportunities is ever changing, and we see also a new line of potential developments in residential real estate, where Hungary is introducing now a new golden visa program for investors into residential real estate. And all these, I think, might give opportunities. Another area which I wanted to mention, and which is I think going big, and probably the prospects are very interesting, is energy, or more particularly renewable energy. We've been involved in a number of renewables transactions, and when I'm talking about that, I'm talking about solar, geothermal, and also wind, which we expect is picking up. There is, to some extent, a currently uncertain situation, which is stemming from the question as to how regulation develops around wind farms, but we see that these changes will inevitably result in a position when Hungary will move closer to renewable energy sources, and this may offer opportunities. Actually, in the energy sector, there are specific foreign direct investment rules. György, possibly could you elaborate on that, please?
Which one? Sorry, which
the energy FDI specifics.
Yes, so recently, actually, as of this year, mid-January, there are new rules in the FDI system in relation to solar power plants, which means that if the subject matter of the transaction is a solar power plant, then the Hungarian state has a preemption right. The regulation of this preemption right is incorporated into the FDI rules. And this is basically another a condition precedent or something that needs to be handled during the transactional document. In short, this rule means that if the target is active in solar power plants, or active in this sphere of the energy, then the Hungarian state, through its state-owned company, can acquire the project and can exercise a preemption right. So basically, that's the newest matter in the field of FDI, and which relates to energy.
Adam, a question to you. How can foreign investors effectively navigate the Hungarian business environment, including the regulations, bureaucracy, and the cultural norms? What are the best strategies for partnering with state-backed businesses in Hungary?
So basically, what is strongly advised, that foreign investors approach the state. The state has a special foreign investments promoting agency called HIPA, and before making final decision, HIPA should be approached, and the terms of state support and state subsidy should be negotiated. First, it is a good negotiation strategy, saying that I might come to Hungary, I might come to another jurisdiction, so that most of the state subsidy and support could be obtained. Second, under EU regulation, if you have a commitment towards investment in Hungary, you cannot get a subsidy, because the philosophy behind the permissible state aid is that Hungary tries to attract foreign investors before they committed to the Hungarian market. So therefore, not only from negotiation strategy, but also due to legal requirement, before making any commitment, agreement should be made with the government, terms of subsidy should be discussed, and a formal application should be filed both with the Ministry of Finance and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Economics. And when these formal applications are made, then final decision can be made on acquiring land or procuring machinery. So this is basically, it is strongly recommended to foreign investors.
And another question raises that how can the state-backed businesses better align their interests with the private sector to create a more competitive and a dynamic Hungarian economy?
So it should be focused on those areas, first, which are permissible, which can be supported by the state, and second, those business areas which are somehow in the priority of the state. Because if investment takes place in priority areas, then, for instance, the amount of direct cash subsidy can be higher. Or if investment takes place in a region where the government is strongly supporting investments, then the direct amount of the direct cash subsidy can also be higher. So basically, it should be followed the purposes of the state and the interest of the state in terms of investment, geographical investment area, and industry of investment.
And Adam, could you elaborate on some successful examples of the state-backed business collaborations?
Yeah, so several years ago, BMW, the car manufacturer, decided to invest into Debrecen, which is a city in East Hungary. At that time, there were not so much foreign investors there. And the state decided to construct highway connection to the development plan, railway connection to the development plan. And later, also CATL, the Chinese battery manufacturer, decided to go to Debrecen, and further infrastructural improvements were supported by the state. Again, as said, because of EU rules, the direct support is limited. However, infrastructural support is unlimited to the extent that it serves public purposes. So some public investments were pursued and undertaken by the state, but that helped substantially to improve the infrastructure of private investments. I can also talk about Mercedes, which invested in Kecskemét and which caused a huge boom. Of course, not only in the manufacturing, but also in the infrastructural surrounding.
And another question is, how can the investors leverage innovation and emerging technologies to their advantage within the Hungarian business landscape?
So I can say a good example, this is renewable energy. Few years or 1 year ago, there was no specific regulation on the support of renewable energy. However, the law changed at the end of last year, and foreign investors which are investing in manufacturing and which want to make sure that they get cheap energy from own resources and invest in PV projects, for instance, they can get substantial subsidy from the Hungarian state. And that is a very positive change, because in the past there was no support in energy-related investments at all. And now it is strongly supported, of course, if it is connected to an industrial investment, to a manufacturer. And that is also important for the investor, because the investor can be sure that the price of energy shall not be market price, but due to own energy resources, it can somehow control energy prices.
Are there any specific business networks or forums that facilitate the connections between the foreign investors and the local businesses?
So first of all, I should mention HIPAA. HIPAA is, as I told, the government agency promoting foreign investments, and they are really keen to help. They offer geographical, they have good relations with the mayors, the local mayors, and they can suggest geographical areas where they think that it makes sense to invest, and they think that the government would give the highest direct cash subsidy. And they also negotiate sometimes with the authorities. This is the first. Secondly, there are some chambers like commercial chambers, big investor countries like Germany or Korea or Japan have some supporting agencies, houses, which the purpose of these supporting houses that they approach potential investors from their home country, and they negotiate with Hungarian government organs in respect of the promoting of investments. There is also some Turkish Hungarian country section of this chamber, of the Hungarian Chamber of Commerce, which is specialized on promoting Turkish investors who are interested in Hungary. So the answer is yes, there are various channels which are ready to support, which are happy to support, and of course this, especially the government organs, but also the chamber, it's free support.
And I would like to ask a question about the exit strategies. What considerations should investors keep in mind when planning exit strategies from the investments in Hungary?
I mean, planning the exit, I think is a vital perspective for any investor starting with a new project, because ultimately the investment is made for returns. I think one area which we briefly already touched upon that might impact exit is the scope of FDI regulations, because this means effectively that the number of buyers may therefore be limited, in a sense that some buyers are unwilling to enter the country, and there might be transactions which do not pass the screening. So this is to some extent a degree of business risk. I think another consideration, which I think Adam has already mentioned, that there are certain statutory preemption rights, for example, solar parks, but also regarding property when it comes to areas in protected areas by World Heritage or otherwise. And I think generally another very important consideration is that if one is entering into a venture where state aid is provided, the exit might need to be planned so that one avoids a situation that the state aid becomes subject to repayment, because as a main rule, the payment and also the maintenance of these payments or subsidies is usually linked to conditions. And if one is not complying with the maintenance conditions, that might trigger a repayment obligation. And also, which might again limit the scope of the buyers. Many times the state aid or subsidies is available to small and medium-sized investors, but probably not for multinational companies. So therefore, if an exit is made, well, depending on the buyer, if the exit is made so that the buyer in itself would be ineligible for continuing subsidized position, and therefore subsidies are to be repaid, probably the price they would pay is accordingly lower. So therefore, this is a consideration that one might need to think about in advance, that there's a limitation therefore in the scope of the buyers. Other than that, I think Hungary is not very different in terms of planning exit from other jurisdictions in the EU market. I think one additional consideration I would raise is foreign currency fluctuations and risks, but probably the bulk of that can be hedged by financial investment means.
Thank you,
Maybe so one thing to add is that in terms of transactional documentation and FDI, so even between JV partners, when you have a JV partner in terms of an investment in Hungary, it's usually people apply put option, for example, in relation to an exit strategy, and even in such case, the FDI may apply. So even in shareholders' agreement, it should be considered that there shall be provisions to make sure that the FDI process is in place in Hungary, and in such case, how such situation should be handled when some party, for example, wanted to exercise a put option, but at the end it cannot exercise it because, for example, the approval of the FDI approval was not granted. So even in terms of exit strategy, FDI has an importance which should be considered.
Okay, I got it. Got it. And we have some questions from the audience. The first question is about the real estate. What are the benefits of investing in the real estate? I think you already explained about the industry, which is promising, but do you want to add something more?
Well, probably another additional consideration that the Hungarian real estate market is a developing market. And I think that after the years of COVID and after years of missing investments into the sector, I mean, many of the developments have stopped. There are a significant missing level of investment in the residential property market. The market is probably waiting for a new wave of investments to start. The good question is always, when is the right time with that? But the kind of in certain areas we believe that there's a kind of standstill, and the more one gets into a position where investments were postponed or exits were postponed, more and more kind of backlog is created in terms of missing transactions, and I think these should come sooner or later.
Yeah, I just to add, and I just want to re-emphasize the importance that when state aid is given to an investor, the investor, of course, should assume certain commitments in terms of revenue, in terms of expenditure on labor force. And for instance, in the case of an exit, it should also strongly consider whether these commitments are complied with, because if not, then it could trigger some kind of repayment of obligations. Also, there are certain preconditions for granting state aid, and this is the support of the parent company by means of a parent company guarantee. So if it is not complied with the commitment in respect of state aid received, then the parent company should be forced to pay a certain amount to the state dependent on the amount of violation of the commitments.
Thank you. Another question from the audience is that are there any industry clusters or networking opportunities for foreign investors to engage with the local stakeholders?
Broadly, the answer is yes. I would say that there are, I would start that the most obvious entry point for investors is, on one hand, the organization called HIPA or HIPAA. Adam already mentioned that in connection with state subsidy opportunities. But more on the business side, I think generally the starting points are the chambers of commerce. We find that the American Chamber of Commerce is particularly helpful and is offering all sorts of services, not just American firms, but to the business community in general by way of various activities. And also the Hungarian Chamber of Commerce and Industry has various sections which promote investments in the respective sectors. And notably, the Hungarian Chamber of Commerce and Industry is also having a bilateral Turkish-Hungarian section focusing specifically on these investments, which might also be a starting point. And there are various industry organizations like the Association of Automotive Manufacturers and many others. So yes, these exist and give additional comfort and kind of safety net for those who want to venture into investing here.
Thank you, Paul. And the last two questions are related with the defense industry, and the question is, what initiatives has Hungary undertaken to modernize its armed forces and enhance their capabilities? I don't know, Vezlovius, if you are able to answer this question or not, but this is the question from the audience.
Yeah, I think generally the background is that historically Hungary has been lagging behind in terms of spending on the army and the defense, and more recently Hungary starts to align with itself with the NATO requirement to spend about 2% of its GDP on defense, which means that the expectation and the plans are that Hungary is modernizing its army, also generally the defense forces, and not only the state is spending onto itself in terms of these investments, but the Hungarian government is also supporting investments in the defense sector, and this is already coming. The two most recent examples in my mind are manufacturing. Rheinmetall is setting up a manufacturing company in Hungary, and I think Nural is also increasingly active in Hungary. So the defense industry is one where very substantial amounts are again wait to be spent, and in terms of manufacturing, this offers even further opportunities because of the location and also the availability of skilled workforce generally.
Mm-hmm. I think you have answered some of the parts of this upcoming new question, but I want to repeat if you would like to add something more. How the political and diplomatic relations between Turkey and Hungary influence their defense collaboration? Are there any challenges or opportunities in the bilateral relationship that impact defense cooperation?
In relation to that specific question, I think that as things stand today, and probably things will stand very similarly for years on, the political and diplomatic relations between the two countries actually very much encourage and support defense collaboration. And I wouldn't actually see the challenges in that sense, given that those countries are NATO members. the leadership of the two countries are probably, I could say, rather aligned in their political directions. So I would say that rather generally the environment is supportive.
Thank you very much, the distinguished guests. I think we have answered all the questions, and it was a very insightful presentation to know more about the Hungarian market. In the upcoming days, we will post this interview on the Spotify and the YouTube. And thank you for those all who joined us with the questions. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you very much for inviting us. It's been a pleasure to be with you. And we strengthen the message that we are available to assist further in relation to these areas that we have discussed. So if anyone in the audience is having further questions or would want to see more discussion, we are available to be contacted directly. Email, telephone addresses are, I think, available. And more generally, not just on the topics covered, we are able to provide full service business advice on issues around investing in Hungary, maintaining investments in Hungary, and also exiting Hungary to the extent that is coming. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Goodbye.